Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT11, and BT11 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on the Bloom Hydra deck. So Bloom Hydra is a pretty interesting deck where the whole core theme of the deck is to be able to digivolve from your egg to your level 6 and to be able to suspend your Digimon for various buffs and benefits, with a little bit of swarm tactics to be able to try to help play your other Digimon, while all your Digimon are trying to be vegetations, plants, and fairies to help synergize with one another. So with all that said and done, let's just get into the deck profile, starting off with the Digitama. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of Argomon. So the Digitama slots in this deck are kind of flexible. I do like Argomon for the potential to help us gain some extra memory to be able to make more powerful plays with, because we have more memory to play around with, and green with extra memory is very dangerous because it's one of the most memory efficient colors in terms of how we're going to be utilizing our Digimon and digivolving up the chain. And then as far as the 5th Digitama slot of the deck goes, you don't necessarily have to run a 5th Digitama if you don't want one. I like running a 5th Digitama in green specifically because of Mimi, and Gummymon is a pretty good 5th Digitama for the deck to run, adding some extra draw power into the deck. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Terriermon. So this is the BT3 version of Terriermon, and it's just an anti-meta rookie to try to stop the opponent from being able to gain memory, to lock them out of particular plays until they deal with Terriermon, if they even could. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Pomumon. So this is the BT9 version of Pomumon, and it's another anti-meta rookie. Yes, this does sometimes harm us just because it's allowing no players to be able to play Digimon by card effects, but we could always have ways to be able to get off of this card, like digivolving it up into a higher stage Digimon, or try to suicide it into the opponent's security in case we really need to get rid of this card, but it's mostly in here to try to stop the opponent more than try to stop us, while also being a vegetation to fit on brand with the rest of the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Mushroomon. So if you want, you could kind of go down on Mushroomon. The ratios of the deck are pretty flexible in terms of how much of what card you want to run, but I do like having Mushroomon just because he's a very tempo-efficient rookie for us to be playing with, while also being a vegetation Digimon, fitting, again, on brand and on theme with the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Palmon. So this is the BT10 version of Palmon, and this is going to be the deck's dedicated digger, and it's actually a pretty good digger, allowing us to check the top 4, which is a pretty decent amount of cards to look through, and the fact that we get to take a plant or a vegetation and a fairy traded Digimon from among them into our hand is still pretty good, allowing us to potentially grab 2 cards off of this search. And then the last rookie for the deck is going to be 4 copies of Pomumon. So this is the EX3 version of Pomumon, and this is a pretty good card that wants to be suspended and rewards us for suspending him by allowing us to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon. So that way we have ways to suspend the opponent's Digimon alternatively to be able to try to beat it up or take advantage of the fact that we do want it suspended. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Weedmon. So we don't necessarily care about utilizing Weedmon's inheritable ability just because we're not playing any Digiburst in the deck. We just care about the fact that he has some pretty decent stats. Being a level 4 that evos for 1 is already tempo efficient. The play cost of 4 is okay. It's not the most expensive, but it's not the cheapest either. And on top of that, the 3000 DP is a magical number that the deck wants to play with and interact when it comes to utilizing our plants, vegetations, and fairies, which this card is also one of those. And for that same style of reasoning, I'm also going to be running 4 copies of RedVegiemon. So RedVegiemon is basically doing the exact same thing as Weedmon for the deck. Again, even though it doesn't have any abilities, we don't care. We just care about the efficiency of its stats and its typing. And one of the big reasons why we don't really care about anything other than the stat lines when it comes to Weedmon and RedVegiemon is off of a card like Sunflowmon, which we're running 4 copies of. So Sunflowmon is a card to help us try to spawn as many bodies on our field as we possibly can. So when we Digivolve up into it, we get to suspend one of our Digimon to be able to play a plant, fairy, or vegetation with 3000 DP or less from our hand for free, so it just allows us to be able to get out our low-level Digimon relatively easily and efficiently. And then on top of that, it has a nice inheritable ability to go with our higher stage Digimon, for when an effect suspends one of our Digimon, we get to draw a card on top of any other abilities that are activating when we're suspending our own Digimon. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Vegiemon. So this is the brand new BT11 version of Vegiemon, and this card is really powerful when it sticks on the field, especially for multiple turns, just because it has this nice static ability where during the start of our turn, we get to gain 1 memory, and we could use that 1 memory, like the reason why we're running Argomon, to be able to do more powerful things with. I'm only running 2 copies of this card just because it is a little bit situational in terms of how we want to utilize it, similarly to how we want to utilize Weedmon, where its abilities don't matter, but Weedmon is a little bit more efficient to Digivolve into, versus this new version of Vegiemon, which costs 2 to Evo into, so it is a little bit slower if we're going to be utilizing it that way, which means that the more intended way that we want to use it is being able to play it for free off of our cards like Sunflowmon to just try to help us spawn extra bodies, and in that scenario, then this card is just better than something like Weedmon, making it so there's pros and cons and decisions to be made in the deck building process when it comes to what you want to see and how you're going to be utilizing your cards. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Blossomon. So Blossomon is in the deck just because it's a vegetation, so it's fitting on brand with the rest of the deck, while also having Digisorption 3, which means we basically get to suspend another Digimon, or the Digimon that we're utilizing as the level 4 to Digivolve into this card, to be able to Digivolve for 0, which is just really powerful and tempo efficient, so that way we could go into a fast level 6. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Cherrymon. So this is the BT10 version of Cherrymon, and it also has Digisorption 2, except it has a Digivolution cost of 3, so that means when we use this Digizorb, it's going to be Digivolving for 1, which is still pretty tempo efficient compared to most other level 5s in the game. Then on top of that, he is adding some extra defensive capabilities into the deck with a nice redirect ability to swap the attack to one of our suspended Digimon, which should be one of our high-level Digimon to try to de-incentivize them from being able to aggress onto us. And then the last level 5 of the deck is going to be the main level 5 we want to use, and that's going to be 4 copies of Ajatarmon. So he is another vegetation to fit on brand with the rest of the deck, while also having this nice main ability where we get to suspend one of our Digimon to be able to play a Digimon with a vegetation, plant, or fairy in its traits with 3000 DP or less from our hand for free, doing something very similar to Sunflowmon, except it's not on a when Digivolving, so we want to hide this Digimon in raising to threaten the possibility that we could just start spawning bodies and go into a level 6 to punish the opponent for whatever actions they're taking. Then he has a nice inheritable ability for our level 6s to use, where when an effect suspends one of our Digimon down, then we get to gain a memory, again trying to make us as tempo efficient with our cards as we can possibly be. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Bloomlordmon. So Bloomlordmon is the powerhouse backbone of the deck, just because when we Digivolve up into him, we get to suspend one of our Digimon down, and then for suspending one of our Digimon down, we get to then gain a memory for each suspended Digimon with plant, fairy, or vegetation in their traits that we have in play. So the more Digimon we have in play, the more memory we'll gain back, making him even more efficient. And if we gained 2 or more memory off of his effect, then we get to unsuspend this Digimon and he gains Piercing, so that way we could be extra aggressive with the card, just because his secondary ability states that during your turn, for every 2 suspended Digimon we have in play, this Digimon gains plus 2000 DP and security attack +1. So again, the more Digimon we have in play and the more of our Digimon are suspended that are in play, means that he's going to be an even more powerful card for us to be using, especially since with our base combo of Ajatarmon moving out of raising, he's going to be counting himself and whatever we're going to be playing off of Ajatarmon to be able to at least gain the 2 memory and the 2000 DP and the security attack +1 off of that type of lineup play. So Bloomlordmon is going to be basically the sword of the deck, so the shield of the deck is going to be our 3 copies of Hydramon. So Hydramon has a nice Wind Digivolving ability to be able to suspend 1 Digimon in play. It could be ours, it could be the opponent's, it doesn't necessarily matter, which allows us to utilize his effects to be very flexible on the approaches that we can take. Then, on top of that, he has a nice ability that triggers during all turns, where once per turn, when an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, so whether they're attacking or we suspended the Digimon utilizing his Wind Digivolving ability, it doesn't matter. For each suspended Digimon with Plant, Fairy, Vegetation in its traits that we have in play, we get to gain 1 memory. So again, he has a way to try to make us tempo efficient during our turn and try to anti-tempo the opponent during their turn. Then, on top of that, he has a really powerful end of turn ability, where once per turn, if we have 2 or more Digimon that are suspended with Plant, Fairy, Vegetation in their traits in play, then we get to return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon to the bottom of their deck for some added control and removal. And then as far as the tamers of the deck goes, I'm only going to be running 2 copies of Mimi. So Mimi is still just a really good memory fixing tamer to always make sure that we could hard set us to 3 memory to make our plays as efficient as we possibly can. Then on top of that, she has a nice upside on her main ability, where when we have a level 5 or higher green Digimon in play, then we get a suspender to basically get another raising phase, so that way we could try to turbo out and utilize our eggs, alternatively, and to be able to speed up the cycle so we could apply more pressure onto the opponent. And then lastly, onto the options, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered, or HPD for short. So HPD is a super powerful card that it got limited to 1, which is why we're only running 1 copy of the card in the deck, just because it's helping turbo into our higher stages, because its main ability states that the next time one of our Digimon digivolves, we get to suspend one of our Digimon to reduce the memory cost of the Digivolution by 5, basically making it so we could go into any of our level 6s super easily, and suspending the Digimon down isn't actually a de-incentivization tool, it's actually a bonus for how this deck works, because we want our Digimon to be suspended anyway. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Śānti. So Samādhi is a very powerful option card for the deck to run. Even though it's not removing any of the opponent's Digimon, it's still a very cheap and efficient option card that's also suspending our Digimon down to have an alternative way to be able to suspend the opponent's Digimon down, so that way we could try to beat it up and do the classic green thing. Then on top of that, even if we can't beat up their Digimon, they at least won't be able to unsuspend until the end of their next turn, so it stops a lot of potential aggro off of the opponent, while also having a nice security ability to be able to suspend one of their Digimon or Tamers down, so that way we could try to utilize this card to again try to take some pressure off of us, and the fact that this is one of the few cards that's actually interacting with Tamers means that it could still be pretty efficient at slowing down the opponent. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Green Memory Boost. So Green Memory Boost is just a consistency tool. Being able to look at the top 4 for any green Digimon is still pretty powerful, with setting up this card's secondary main ability of delay to gain 2 memory later makes it so that we have the potential for a lot of powerful follow-up plays with. But as far as the overall game plan and gameplay of the deck goes, we are just going to be trying to build 1 big stack and be able to use that stack to be able to set up our level 6, so that way we could try to make a very powerful, effective punish turn against the opponent, or if the opponent isn't doing anything, a really good aggressive turn to try to help line us up and put us in a better, more advantageous position. So we have some anti-meta floodgates. Terriermon we can't necessarily play off of our abilities, so it's just a good card to just sit on, and that's kind of why I'm only running so few copies of the card. But all of our other level 3 Digimon can be played off of our abilities, and we're going to try to utilize them. It doesn't necessarily matter which one we use in our raising area. We're just going to shove one in our raising area to try to get us going and utilize our abilities to be able to hard play extra level 3 Digimon. Then, in terms of the level 4 Digimon we actually want to try to Digivolve up into, well, we're trying to Digivolve into our RedVegiemon or our Weedmon for the tempo, or we're going to try Digivolving into our Sunflowmon to be able to gain its inheritable ability. So depending on the pacing against your opponent, you could kind of gauge which one is going to be more beneficial. So for the sake of the example, I'm just going to play Sunflowmon, even though most of the time we want to use Sunflowmon to be able to help set up our Digimon. It doesn't necessarily matter, we're just utilizing it in our raising for its inheritable ability, allowing us to have extra flexibility off of the card. Then when it comes to our level 5s, this is where we can kind of get creative. We're going to want to use a Blossomon and Argetamon most of the time. If you do realize your opponent's trying to play the chicken game, then we want to utilize Argetamon in our raising area. But if we do want to try to punish the opponent, then we could move out and then Digizorb into a Blossomon just to try to get up into our level 6. But most of the time, we're going to want to utilize Argetamon for that chicken gameplay, just because green can play chicken very well because of how fast that we can move. So from this type of a position, we're already set up to be able to go into a really powerful level 6 turn, no matter which level 6 that we're going to be utilizing. So from this point forward, we're going to want to try to develop our other cards on the field to try to put some additional pressure onto the opponent, forcing them to try to have a response to our field out of their raising area, and that's kind of where the game of chicken starts to take place. So that way, sitting with our Digimon in raising just threatens the punishment on the crackback. But even if we are trying to be aggressive with the card, we're going to be utilizing this type of a stack to be able to move out our Digimon, use our Argetamon's ability to try to play another Digimon for free, and then we could go from here, Digivolve into our Bloomlord, and then our Bloomlord's going to suspend our other Digimon, so that way we have 2 Digimon suspended on our field, so that way we could gain the additional memory back and unsuspend him and gain another memory off of our Argetamon. So we basically Digivolve for 1 into our Bloomlord, and now he's primed and positioned to be able to punish the opponent depending on the plays and follow-up moves that we have to make. But this is what makes cards like Hidden Potential Discovered so powerful, and even if we don't have our Bloomlord, we still have Hydramon to do something very similar with, to either suspend the opponent's Digimon down, or suspend our other Digimon down to try to gain as much value and benefit off of our cards as we possibly can. And this is also why Śānti is a really good card, because it's another way to alternatively safely suspend our Digimon down for some extra benefits, and while we're in a high-level Digimon, we could kind of start trying to snowball the game, especially if we controlled the opponent's field, and that's why a card like Mimi, not only just putting us at 3 memory to be able to do almost whatever we want with, but be able to utilize our raising area more aggressively, is usually for our own benefit. And then there are just a whole bunch of other tech and tools you could think about incorporating into the deck, all depending on the ratios you're playing with and the style of play that you're going for, the expected meta, and what you actually want to gain out of the deck and how you want to play and approach it. So we do have some other rookies that we could think about incorporating. We do have the brand new BT11 Palmon to do something similar to the new Vegiemon, except instead of gaining us a memory, we could draw a card. We could also think about utilizing the BT1 Palmon, but I'm not a huge fan of the limitations on how that card is searching. But we do also have EX1 Palmon as another really good card to use for the deck, just because the on-delete ability acts as a de-incentivization tool for the opponent wanting to delete our Digimon, especially while it's in a suspended state. And we have the starter deck Palmon to try to help DP boost our Digimon for when we're aggressing into the opponent's Digimon. Then we do have some other good level 4 Digimon that we could utilize. So we do have the BT1 version of Vegiemon, just because it's a pretty powerful level 4 Digimon to be playing around with, even though it doesn't have any inheritable abilities. Then we also have BT1 version of Togemon as another way to try to help dig for our higher stage Digimon. But a card we can't necessarily search for, but does reward us for suspending him down, is going to be the EX3 version of Parasauromon, while also having a nice inheritable ability that interacts with how the deck wants to play, rewarding us for suspending one of our Digimon down. And similarly to Parasauromon, a card that we can't necessarily search for, but does have some really good synergy with the deck, is going to be Argomon level 5, all the way back from BT2, because it's another card with Digisorption 3, and we could utilize its inheritable ability to help it play even more Digimon. And then we even have EX3 Entomon as another really good card to use, just because, again, Digisorption 3 is pretty good. He's going to basically evo for 1 when we utilize this ability, and his Wind Digivolving ability allows us to try to be as aggressive with our cards as we possibly can be. And then we also have Chimeramon as another Digimon we can't necessarily search for in the deck, but does have some pretty decent synergy, just because we do have ways to be able to play multiple level 4 Digimon out in a single turn, and that just lines us easily and nicely up for a Chimera DNA play. Then, as far as some other level 6 Digimon that we could be playing around with, we do have the BT10 version of Lotusmon, so she is a fairy for the deck, and she is rewarding us for playing around with plants, fairies, and vegetations. And then if we do want to try to play around with Digiburst, we do have the BT4 version of Nidhoggmon as one of the best Digiburst cards, and as another card that we could think about playing with Digiburst while also fitting on theme with the deck is going to be Refleximon. And then another level 6 that we could think about incorporating into the deck that's fitting on theme with rewarding our Digimon for being suspended is going to be Shivamon, to try to turn off the opponent's options on their turn, on top of the fact that he's going to be trying to passively burn the opponent's security for some good passive damage. And then as far as a level 7 goes, we don't really need any level 7s, but if you want to splash in a Death Exmon just because of how easy it is to utilize this card in basically any deck, then by all means do so. And then as far as options go, we could also think about running some big heart removal in the form of Grandest Soul. I'm not super huge on this card, even though it is still a pretty good card to use, but against decks like Black War Greymon, it's not necessarily the most useful card, and we're better off suspending the opponent's Digimon rather than trying to get rid of them when they have protection against our removal. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.